Record. Okay, so it's recording. So it's 6:04 now. So let's be done by 6:24. All right, so I'll share my screen. Go to here, here, and then present. All right, so Sarah, you can begin.
All right, so hi everybody. For our presentation, we're talking about cultural foundations, and so we'll just dive right in. So looking at culture, what is culture? Basically, it talks about the individual's identity, and this would go around all the things that they basically are born into and grow up with, including race and ethnicity, gender, age, their SES status and class, religion, sexual orientation, language, and their mental and physical ability. And so this has direct implication for teaching and learning because it really does talk about values, traditions, communication and learning styles, and also their contributions and relational patterns. For example, when we are teaching a class full of students, we need to be able to find out if what they give priority to. For example, if they give priority to communal living or cooperative problem solving, because this would directly affect their educational motivation, aspirations, and task performance. Um, Things to look out for would also be how children interact with adults and how the gender roles in the society would affect how we would give classroom instructions, for example.
All right, so a good place to start after that would be like, why is it important to understand cultural foundations? So this is like a really famously seen comic where there's an instructor who's giving a test where obviously not everyone has the same advantages. So it's important when you're the teacher of a class to recognize that your students don't all have the same advantages. So in this example, the test is to climb a tree. Obviously, of these students, only the monkey could climb the tree. So in the same thing in a classroom, if you give some sort of test-worthy evaluation to your students where only a certain number of them will even be able to do it at all because of their background, that's why it's the most important to understand cultural foundations. So one of the biggest points when you take this class is the difference between equality, equity, and justice. So equality is the idea of giving everyone the exact same benefits, whether they need more of that benefit or they don't need it at all. So you can see that the tallest man here doesn't even need to be standing on the benefit to enjoy the game, whereas the shortest man or the boy receives the benefit and still can't see the game. Then you have the idea of equity, where it's the idea that you give support to those who need it and you give as much support as possible to those who need it, which in theory wouldn't be a bad thing. But then you have one person here on the left who is naturally able to see the game over the barrier. And then you have the boy who is now receiving the most support to see the game, but it's still not exactly a fair trade because then there could be, if the situation was different, like if the situation was to crawl under a fence, then you have to change your entire benefit system rather than having to look over the fence. So that's why in this perspective, justice is the most important aspect to be focused on when being a teacher. Because if you remove what's causing the disruption of your students to be able to learn in the first place, then you remove the need for creating benefits or removing benefits. So that's the argument between equality, equity, and justice. When you remove the barrier in total, then you remove the need to have all these seemingly arbitrary benefits and advantages. So the first person who I really wanted to talk about was Dr. Daryl Wing Su. So he is a PhD at Columbia Educational College, and he's a really inspirational person. I think I've referenced him in every class I've taken since I've taken this class. So he has a lot of books. And so one of the books that he has, it's the most famous, is called Microaggressions and Marginality, Manifestation, Dynamics, and Impacts. So in this book, he kind of creates working definitions of some terms that he uses throughout all of his books. So a microaggression, which you'll see in a video that we'll play in class, it's sort of like subconscious aggressions towards different subgroups. So when you say, and then there was an example actually in the reading for today about colonialization. Like a microaggression could be like complimenting someone who speaks English really well as their second language. It might come off as a compliment, but it could also be perceived as an insult, because by saying, oh, wow, your English is so good, the perception is that their English shouldn't have been good in the first place, and you're surprised. So then a macroaggression is a more extreme version of a microaggression. It's like pure, unadulterated racism, like actively being racist. So that one kind of is the most straightforward definition. And then a micro invalidation is when you kind of silence someone's personal cultural upbringing. So when you micro invalidate someone, an example that comes to mind for me is that I teach in a bilingual school in Taiwan, but for the English program, we use all American textbooks. So a lot of the examples in the textbooks that we use are about American history. We had to do a story about how the American flag was made. And it really invalidates the culture of the students receiving the lessons, because it has nothing to do with them. It doesn't have any impact on their lives. They had never heard of it before. They have no background knowledge, and they have no interest. So when you micro invalidate someone, it's basically silencing their entire cultural upbringing and replacing it with what you believe is what they should be learning. So this is the video that we're going to watch in class. It's great. If you haven't seen it before, it really kind of highlights what it is to be microaggressional towards someone. So we're not going to watch it now. We'll watch it in class with our activity, which I'll explain later. So then this is another video which you could watch in your free time. It's an interview with Dr. Gerald Wing Su, where he talks about the approaches he took in writing his book. So it's a really, really fascinating video. I don't think it's too long. It's only about like 7 or 8 minutes. But if you wanted to use him as a reference, this is a really great video to watch, because he really explains why he wrote the books. It's not just a reiteration of what is in the books. He talks about what the books are written for. So it's a really great resource that you could use. So I know that there are some practice comm questions on the Canvas board. So I just kind of came up with my own kind of potential comm questions, which you could definitely manipulate and think about in your own way. So I wrote, based on the definitions of Dr. Gerald Wing Su, what is present in the existing curriculum used at your school that may perpetuate any microaggressions, macroaggressions, or micro-invalidations in your classroom, and how can you redevelop those lessons to make them more appropriate to your diverse student population? Now you could, like Stuart said in class, you could just like completely ignore this reference and not use it in your final comp. Or if in your final comp you have a similar question or something that kind of resonates with micro-invalidations or anything like that, this is just something to think about. So yeah, so that's just an example. So then, oh, here is another video that's not by Dr. Gerald Wing Su, but it is based on his works. So this is a really short video, 3 minutes. If you teach young students, like lower elementary, this is a really, really great resource, because it really kind of breaks down the idea of why an inclusive classroom is important, and it breaks it down in a way that a young learner could understand. So instead of using big vocabulary words like Dr. Gerald Wing Su does, you could show them this video, and it really does give a good light on why we need to learn this and why students need to learn it. So then there is the, I don't know how to pronounce the name, the Cloken-Strodbeck value orientation theory, which is a theory that was developed by these two theorists, and it's the earliest efforts to develop a cross-cultural theory of values. So basically it states that no matter what culture you come from, no matter where you grew up, no matter how you were raised, there's 5 key components that all cultural values have. So number 1, human nature, the relationship between human beings in the natural world, time, human activity, and social relations. So in response to their theory of values, I wrote another kind of example comp question, which you could again manipulate and think about in your own way. So viewing your classroom as a microcosm of society, how can you strategize your teaching in the efforts of creating an inclusive classroom using the Cloken-Strodbeck value orientations theory? So then this video is pretty famous on YouTube. It's the privilege walk. You could definitely use this as a reference as well and check it out on your own time. And then this last video that I put on here is from the movie Freedom Writers from 2007. And if you haven't seen the movie, it's obviously about education and teaching, and it's a really great showcase of what it means to be a teacher trying to create an inclusive classroom. So maybe if we have time during our 15-minute presentation in class, we could watch it. If not, you could definitely watch it in your own time. This video is just a 2-minute clip from the movie, but it's probably the most famous scene of the movie.
All right, so then now we talk about creating that culturally responsive teaching that would help our learners, right? And so what is the definition of it? It means that we are constantly reflecting and being like willing to listen, I think would be the most important thing, and to change our methodology so that we can respond to our students in a very positive and constructive way. I think especially when we international teachers, we go into a new culture and we have all these preconceived notions, to be able to open up ourselves to learning so that we'll be able to give our students the space for them to interact with each other as well as to show their authentic selves, right? And so how does the culturally responsive teaching help students? It liberates students to find their own voices. I think we can go on to the next slide. Thank you. And to find their own voices and engage in thinking that is very multi-dimensional, multicultural, because they're not only thinking about themselves, and because we have given them that space to say that, hey, we know and we want to find out more about where you're from, you know, what kind of experiences you've had and how you could become an active participant, active member of our classroom community. And when they're able to do that, they're empowered, then they will also allow other students and they'll be more willing to listen to other students as they share all their experiences together. And so this is how they would benefit from the culturally responsive teaching that we have in our classrooms, right? And they would become socially and academically empowered. And because they know that us as the educators are very committed to their success from where they're from. And we do know that we have to cover content and get them to learn certain skills. But knowing and having that backing up from their teacher that their voices are being heard, I think that's really important so that they can use their prior knowledge and experiences and perspectives. And they are able to also bridge that home and school environment to be able to bring their knowledge together, and us as educators allowing them to have these diversified instructional strategies to meet all of their needs. And I think that's definitely something that they will be able to take with them. And so the theorist that I would like to talk about is Urie Bronfenbrenner, and he developed this ecological systems theory in which he talks about how the child and the child's environment certainly affects how they grow and develop. And so it serves as a reminder to us educators how we have to approach teaching by thinking of the whole child, of their unique set of abilities and characteristics, their background, their religious views, all of these, and coming together to help the students become successful, right? And so this is the system that he has developed, and right smack in the middle would be the individual. And the first sort of nest that he covers layer of it would be the microsystem. And this encompasses the individual's human relationship, interpersonal reactions, and to their immediate surroundings. So this would be the individual, which is the child's relationship to their parents, to their siblings, to their neighbors, and the school environment. I think we can show them the next slide so that, yeah, so this is much better view. So this is how the individual interact individually with all these different relations. That's the microsystem. The next one is the mesosystem. This is how the individual's interactions, sorry, I'll rephrase that. This is how like the school environment and the parents interact with each other and how this will affect the individual, which is the student. The third layer of it is called the exosystem. And this system is how it affects the child or the individual indirectly. So part of the child's system would be the parent. But something that happens to the parent in the exosystem, which is the previous slide, yes, the exosystem, for example, if a parent loses a job, and so this affects the parent, but also indirectly would affect the individual, which is the child. And so how the child goes to school, knowing and having these experiences would affect their experiences in school. And that's how we as educators would have to try to be flexible in understanding their position. The next one, which is the fourth layer, is the macro system. This is the cultural and societal beliefs that the child is born into, and that's how they become part of it, and often not by their own choosing. And the final layer of it is the chronosystem, and this is the cultural and societal norms that's changing over time. So something that could happen would be a major life transition, maybe a divorce of the parents, and how this would affect the individual over time. So with all of these, right, so the microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem, macrosystem, and chronosystem of the individual, how that child comes to school with all these experiences, and we as educators would then have to make it a cultural responsive classroom in order for them to thrive in their best possible self.
2 minutes. So I'm not going to talk about this too long because I think everyone has seen this model before, but it's the Edward T. Hall Cultural Iceberg Model. You can take a closer look when you go through our slides. And then I do have an example question of how you could implement him as a reference. So then before our class on Tuesday, what I want you guys to do for our activity is I've posted on the Google Share Drive a document with this image. So I kind of made a joke. So please spend like about 5 minutes or however long you want to think about it, considering this chart. And that's going to be the activity that we do in class on Tuesday. So the chart basically gives you the opportunity to kind of see where your perspectives are as far as cultural awareness in your classroom. So, and then, like I said, you could check the Google Drive for all of these documents and a few references, as well as the course syllabus from this class, EDFN521 Cultural Foundations, that I placed there. So that is our 20 minutes, and thanks for watching.